She was a white woman and that I was an Asian woman. Literally, we have to do sometimes twice the workload of someone else and we're probably even being paid less, LOL. Asians automatically get associated with white people because of the model minority, even though Asian people are not seen as more like white people to white people. Hello. Today we have an interesting, uncomfortable to some people, but yet very important conversation, and it is about race. It's about discrimination in the workplace against Asian women, women of color, people of color, and I want to share how it creates burnout and affects you in different ways, as well as provide tips as to how you can take care of yourself in these environments physically, mentally, emotionally, so that you feel safe and you can still live a peaceful life. And side note, even if you're white, if you don't identify as a person of color, you can still take something away from today's conversation, even if it's just a different perspective. Another quick note here, in the past, whenever I spoke about race, I noticed there seemed to be a group of people who would say, what race? I don't see no discrimination based on skin color. I don't see skin color. Stop trying to divide people based on the color of their skin, trying to label people based on their gender. And in response to that, I want to say, if you don't see discrimination based on skin color, I'm not denying you of your experiences and perceptions. In fact, I'm happy for you. That is a reality so many of us want to witness. But not everyone experiences that in their reality. And if you're open to hearing about people's real life experiences, I'm gonna be sharing them in today's video. There's also a book that speaks to this very topic, and it shares dozens and dozens of real life examples from different women of color. I highly recommend the book. It is so worth a read, and I'm gonna link that book down below in the description box. And believe me, when I say I do not wake up every single day excited to go off and label people, identify people based on the color of their skin. It's just that it's been done in today's society, and that's why whenever I use these terms like women of color or people of color, people feel genuinely connected. Like they do not feel divided. Instead, they feel like someone finally gets them. They understand how they have lived their lives based on the color of their skin. I hope that makes sense. If not, rewind a couple of times and let that all sink in. But we're gonna get started. Remember the stereotype that Asians are so good at math. Like they are the people you need to hand your homework off to so they can complete it for you. Well, I wonder if that mentality is gone because it seems to still linger in the workplace. And I get it. I get how that can actually be seen as a good thing. Isn't it great if you are perceived as someone who's so smart, someone who's so hardworking? And by the way, I'm speaking in general. Like this is not to say all Asians are categorized as such smart, hardworking people and that non-Asians are not. I'm saying just in general, there seems to be this overall subconscious perception, agreement, if you will. Like, isn't that a good thing to be generally seen as a hardworking, studious kind of person? That is a privilege in itself because there are groups of people who are literally discriminated against based on their skin color in such a way that they aren't even able to obtain certain jobs. But allow me to share the dark side to this. So in one of my corporate roles, I was tasked to create this comprehensive dashboard for us to track this metric across all the branches in our company. Being responsible for it, I talked to different stakeholders within the company, outside the company. I visited different physical branches and talked to just various people. And a lot of them came back to me saying that cannot be done. Like it's not feasible, especially given the low resources we had. So I told my boss it was not a feasible project and that it couldn't be done. However, he insisted I figure a way out and just get the job done. So I spent over 6 months trying so hard to manually put this dashboard together. It was very manual labor, and at the end I showed it to my boss. He was fine with it. Afterwards, I was transitioning into a new role, and someone else, another colleague, was coming into my role and taking over my responsibilities, including maintaining this dashboard. Now, I remember training her on this dashboard, on how it worked, how to use it. I remember her getting really anxious because she said it looked like a lot of work and it just seemed so confusing, complex to her. This dashboard required a lot of manual labor to maintain because there was no support in terms of automation. Now, a few weeks or months later, I checked in with her just to see how things were going, and she showed me this completely different project she was working on compared to the one that I was working on, and it looked so much more fun. It looked so much more simple and interesting. She was working on these videos, like it was video creation. She basically told our white male boss that the dashboard was too confusing, too complex, so he assigned her a completely different project, so much less complex, so simple, so interesting. The dashboard I worked so hard on, it never got to see the light of the day, and nobody ever touched it after that. We both voiced the same thing on this project. In fact, I voiced countless times throughout the dashboard project, but only one voice was heard, and it was heard. And it was heard the first time they spoke up. And I can't help but notice that the only difference between the both of us was that she was a white woman and that I was an Asian woman. I didn't think much of it at the time because I kept thinking, it's my responsibility. The onus is on me. I just need to do better, try harder. And that's the mentality that really helps these capitalistic corporations today. It's not it. But the truth is, many people see Asian people as the ones who can get the grunt work done, even if it's scrappily on low resources and low support. And I'm sure it's not necessarily a conscious, malicious intent. These people were not terrible. It was not a toxic work environment when you look at it surface level, but there is the subconscious underlying factor. There's the system that lies beneath. It's the patriarchy. It's the white supremacist system that weaves into our lives, and in this instance, into our work lives. Now, I worked in corporate for 4 years in 2 different companies from 2 different industries. I've worked with different bosses, different genders, white and colored bosses. And talking to different Asian women or women of color, I've realized that many of us share very similar stories and experiences that we have internalized. We assume the responsibility. We take it upon ourselves to say that we need to do better. We need to try harder. It's our duty. It's on us. But that can be so burdening and draining on you. Your job is not worth your health. The other bad news is, in general, okay, people don't seem to see Asians as the sociable group. You're the one they want to have in a group project so you can get the job done while they go ahead and talk to their other colleagues. And by the way, I'm speaking generally here. This is not to say everyone else is slacking off, only Asians are hard at work. No. I'm not saying it's happening 100% of the time, but it's happening enough that we kind of see it as a pattern. Back to the story, this can create a mental toll of loneliness, of feeling disconnection, and that can create burnout because they have to put in extra effort just to fit in, and that's on top of all the work they have to do already. I know I have some privileges of being born here in Canada, of understanding the Western culture, not having an accent. It's easier for me to fit in, to socialize. But when I see international Asians, for example, I cannot imagine how that would feel, how it would be for them. I also remember a few months into my first corporate role, my colleague turned friend, he came up to me and he was just like, Nicole, I am just shocked because I thought you were going to be this completely different person when I first saw you. He thought I was going to be the stereotypical quiet, shy Asian girl off in the corner working all by myself, and we would have no interaction between us. I was pretty shocked he had all these perceptions of me just based on my physical appearance. But then I think about myself, I have also internalized beliefs about different groups of people, and it just reminds me to remember to stay open, to be self-aware, and to give other people grace, give myself grace as well. Another stereotype of Asians is that they don't speak up for themselves. They stay silent, and that's why it's very easy to cross their boundaries. And in the workplace, that can look like giving them extra work to do, giving them the hard work to do, or not listening to their feedback. Now, I want to share some responses I've had in regards to this on my Instagram from Asians and white people. It's like an unspoken thing. Asians are taken advantage of in the workplace and set at higher expectations than their non-Asian counterparts. Literally, we have to do sometimes twice the workload of someone else, and we're probably even being paid less, LOL. Another Asian responded to this saying, I learned to pretend to know less, LOL. I have another DM quote. As a mostly white person, obviously I've never experienced a discrimination based on my skin, but I was absolutely horrified when the racism and discrimination my friends and I knew about started to happen to them directly. She also shared how she was reflecting on this with her boyfriend, who was Asian, and they were talking about how, quote, Asians automatically get associated with white people because of the model minority, even though Asian people are not seen as more like white people to white people. And in reality, Asian Americans have to work their asses off to be where they are. Those were just some of the stories that have come up. I'm sure there's still many out there. I believe it's so important to share these stories so that we feel less lonely, we feel connected, and we don't believe that it's on us, that it's our problem. I also want to share this to raise awareness for all of us as a collective to simply do better. I know how important it is to advocate for yourself, especially being a woman of color, so I want to share a couple of tips I've learned. My biggest piece of advice to advocate for yourself in the workplace as a woman of color is to keep receipts. And that means save emails, messages, proof of your achievements, of the impact of the work you've done. Even if people acknowledge you, you want to literally screenshot that and save it. Save documented proof of the work you've done, even if it is call history, just to show that you have had these conversations with stakeholders. And this last tip is going to be so helpful, especially if you have a micromanaging manager or a manager who keeps piling you with lots of work to do. And that's to keep a Google or Excel spreadsheet of your time commitments to the different priorities you have at work. This is so helpful for you and your boss so that you can get clarity on how you should be allocating your time to different priorities. Now, in the workplace, I have advocated for things like reimbursements for a higher bonus that I believed I deserved for my work responsibilities. But over time, it becomes extremely tiring having to advocate for so many things to justify almost all the smallest things, and it feels like you're trying to justify your worth compared to other people, white people, for example, whose needs, their requests for support are more easily met than yours. And by the way, I recognize that being an Asian in this system has its privileges. I'm sharing these stories not to highlight and put Asian experiences above anyone else's. In fact, it is just to contribute to the idea that this whole system, the patriarchy, the white supremacist system, it has a negative impact on all of us. It is negatively impacting us in different ways. I recognize there are other people facing different levels of unfortunate discrimination, and this is not to take away from their stories and experiences. If you're interested in this conversation, I highly recommend the book I mentioned earlier. I don't remember the name, so I have to link it down below, but that book shares so many examples, real examples from Latinos, Black, and brown people, and they even share how white people respond to these conversations. Some of them become very uncomfortable, they get very defensive and upset, but there are others who are very open. They are willing to learn, to listen, and to speak out about these. And now I want to wrap up today's conversation on how you can take care of yourself in these environments. The workplace can feel very unsafe, especially when you feel like people don't get you, they don't understand you, they don't have your back, and that can create anxiety. I used to get so anxious, I would feel these Sunday scaries, and I would literally waste my whole Sunday just feeling anxious about the upcoming Monday and the upcoming work week ahead. It is so important to create a sense of safety for yourself, so here are some of my biggest tips. The first thing is to find things you can control in your work environment and use it to create a sense of safety for yourself. Try to target all of your 5 senses. Back when I was working in my cubicle, I would put on my earphones so that while I was doing work, I would be listening to, for example, business podcasts, and that lit me up so much because I'd be imagining how I could be building my business and how my business could create a new reality for myself. Or I'd be listening to some soothing music, and that would help me feel safe. And during COVID, we had these online Zoom or Microsoft Teams meetings, and these meetings can feel very tense. They feel very uptight. So what I would do is I would lower the volume of the laptop so that their voices would sound a lot softer and I would feel a lot more relaxed. Another great tip I've heard from Ali Abdel is he would play soft music in the background. I love that advice so much, to just have lo-fi or some jazz music playing in the background. Now, if you have a lot of anxiety, whether you work in the cubicle or if you're working from home, I highly recommend having something you can hold on to, physically touch. That could be a cushion or even a pillow, just to hold on to as you're working. This can help your body and emotions feel supported, to feel held. Affirmations, quotes, pictures, things that you can see that can make you feel safe. And if you work outside of home, ask to see if you can work from home at least once a week. And just make it a mood to feel so safe. I love soft, dim lighting. I love candles. I love getting comfy. Sometimes I love to just work on the sofa. My second tip is to set boundaries. So right after work, I clock out. I take my laptop and I throw it right under the bed, out of sight, out of mind. What I then do is I give myself about an hour just to neutralize, to drain out any work energy. And from there, it is completely my time. I'm not thinking about work anymore. My third advice is also so important, and that is to create a social support circle at work, especially with colleagues who may understand your challenges and struggles at work. One thing I always miss from all my workplaces, it's always the people. Like, I've met such awesome, great, kind people from work, and I'm just so grateful that I still keep in touch with them to this day. My next tip is to take care of yourself physically and emotionally, and that means getting in your 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Eat well, get in movement. All these things really help you with managing stress. My fifth tip is to do your best to speak up for yourself, but then also give yourself so much grace and be so kind for yourself. Speaking up for yourself is already such a scary thing for you to do, but something you should be so proud of. If it goes your way, be proud of yourself, celebrate yourself. Amazing. If it doesn't go my way, I don't guilt trip myself. I don't blame or critique myself. Instead, I tell myself, I'm so proud of myself for still trying. I've done my part and I'm proud of myself. My last tip is to create a safety net for yourself. And there's so many ways to do this. The first one being create a fund for yourself. You want to save money for this fund. In the instance you decide you cannot take it anymore and you want to quit your job, you now have a safety net you can live on while you find another job or create a new stream of income. The second example is a little extreme, but there's this movement a lot of people have taken on, and it's called the FIRE movement. Freedom, Independence, Retire Early movement, where people try to save as much as they can. Some of them get really scrappy. They then invest as much as they can into the stock market or other means, and they try to retire early. The next tip is to find a job that's just not as stressful. Even if you have to take a pay cut, it is so worth it when it comes to your health, because there's been so much research done showing how stress is linked to illnesses like cancer. Your job is not worth your health. Now, the last safety net is the best one in my opinion, because I am biased, and that is to build your side hustle. Ever since having my side hustle, I felt like I had my own identity. I could finally separate myself from my job. I was no longer reliant on my job for my self-worth, for my finances. Instead, I'm now independent in this way, and that allowed me to feel so much more confident in my job. Sometimes I would work on my side hustle, my business, right before work, and it just made me feel so excited and energized. I would bring that energy back into my work as well. I love my side hustle because I get to attract people who are aligned with me, and it makes work so much more enjoyable. I also have so much more control in my business. However, I am gonna say it is not for everyone, because it requires resilience, it requires patience, it requires a strong purpose for moving forward. I coach my clients on creating their online side hustle through social media to become a creator or a coach. If you're interested in this, you can learn more on my website at nicolecoke.com. Now, this conversation is not the most comfortable one for everyone. I mean, I have never seen a YouTube video that talks about what I'm talking about in today's video. Instead, I see a lot of YouTube videos about a day in my life in my 9-to-5 job type of work vlogs, and they make work look so nice and just so comforting and relaxing, but that is not always gonna be the reality. And it's really not easy for me to speak up on these topics as well. I'm so grateful though, I have a really supportive community who really gets me, and they support me in speaking out about these things that truly do matter. I hope this video helped you find more peace, connection, and even opened your eyes to a different perspective. I have a 6-week group course called Your Six-Figure Self that starts in January 2024. I'm going to teach you how to own your six-figure self, that version of you that shows up online so confidently to create your online side hustle, as well as show up confidently in your workplace so that you have strong, healthy boundaries and can speak up for yourself and still enjoy work. I'll be leading you to practice the embodiment of your six-figure self online in social media, for your side hustle, or in the workplace. For more information, the link is in the description box below. We're starting January 2024. It is going to be such a transformative experience for you. That's it for today's video. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have such an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next video.